Everything you love was once a project. The apps you tap, the bridges you cross, the shows you stream. None of them happened by accident. Behind every one of them was a dream, a team, and a project manager trying to hold it all together. I'm Rick Morris, and this is AI Driven PM, the show where project managers stop playing games, embrace reality, and use AI to make dreams come true without burning out their people. Each week, we'll blend real world project war stories with practical ways to put AI to work. How to plan smarter, negotiate better dates, protect your team, and focus on the work that actually moves the needle. If you ever thought there has to be a better way to do this, then you're in the right place. Let's get to work. This is AI Driven PM. Welcome to another edition of AI Driven PM. This is season 2, episode 2. And today we're going to talk about what do project managers really do? And how is AI going to help us and enable that? So first, when AI can write status reports, what's left for us? When they can do the meeting minutes, when they can, right now they're saying they can even update the project schedules and do resource forecasting, which, by the way, there's been functions that have been doing that forever. If you've ever used resource leveling in Microsoft Project, you already know that if you just try to use math and formulas, then it says, oh, here's this project that's 6 months. Let's do resource leveling. And it pushes it to be a 7.5-year project, because that's the reality of the scheduling software. It's just math and filling it in. But when people think that AI can do all of this stuff for us, then what's left for project managers? I'll tell you what's left. Please, first of all, let AI do all of that. Please. I want it to do all of that so that I can focus on doing the work that really matters. And that really is everything that actually matters. So many PMs right now spend about 60% of their time or more, but 60% of their time or more is on coordination or busy work, right? It's not tremendous, adding tremendous value, which means only 40% of their job is focused on actually creating value in what we do. And what I mean by value is like, being able to avert a risk, or being able to generate new ideas, or clear roadblocks, or anticipate the needs of somebody and get ahead of a project. We can't do any of that if we're focused backwards and documenting what happened last week. So if AI can handle status updates, meeting notes, risk logs, timeline adjustments, all that stuff, what's our real jobs? So let's frame that first. Again, using our mantra of "we make dreams come true," that's number one, first and foremost. That's what we always say. But what we really do is sense making. We've got to translate this chaos into clarity for stakeholders. There's so many moving pieces, there's so many moving parts, and you need that centralized storyteller to be able to navigate and talk about what's going on. So we're sense making people. That's where value is taking an abstract idea and turning it into concrete requirements for someone to understand. Hearing a technical problem and being able to frame that as a business value problem to a sponsor to get to a decision. That's sense making what we do. Another thing we do is decision architecture. So we design how decisions get made and by whom. Think about that. I don't know if you've ever heard anyone say it that way before, but so many times I see that they try to force project managers to make a decision. Like, we're the ones that are supposed to make a decision. That's not what we do. We frame decisions and we design a decision architecture so that we can make sure that we're making the best decision. Now, we can influence the direction we would like it to go or the answer we would like, but we actually don't make decisions. Nowhere in the PMBOK does it say the project manager makes the decision. What we do is we analyze, we come up with options, we present those options, we go for a decision, and then we enforce the decision that was made. Energy management is something else that we do, keeping teams motivated and aligned on what matters. But again, that's not scope control. It's energy management. And I want you to think about that way. Like, have you walked into that room where people are really, really proactive and they really enjoy each other's presence and they're having fun and they're being creative, and you can feel that momentum? What you're feeling is that energy, that positive energy that's driving innovation, that's driving great work. I also walked into rooms that you literally, like, you can't walk into the room because it's so tense, right? The air is just frigid and people are very angry with each other. Like, you can walk in a room and feel the tension. So us as project managers, we have to understand that, regulate that, and create the right energy so that innovation can thrive. And finally, we do conflict resolution. So we're navigating competing priorities, personalities. I've worked on many projects where the C-suite are all at odds with each other, and all I've had one project where every single one of the C's, I had a CIO, a CTO, a CFO, and a CEO all come to me and tell me not to listen to the other people, just to them. And like you just, okay, yeah, we'll do that. But I've got to navigate those personalities and those competing priorities. So conflict resolution, sense making, maybe AI can help clarify. Decision architecture, it can help suggest, but it doesn't really do. But energy management and conflict resolution, that can make or break a project. So that's really where our value is really need to be focused. And we can't do that if we're staring at a screen, writing down who said what in the meeting yesterday. So that's where we start to get into this AI augmentation model. So again, I don't think that the AI replaces a project manager, but you will be replaced by a project manager who knows how to leverage AI. And that AI augmentation model says that AI should handle the transactional, so reports, tracking of items, suggesting of read the meeting notes and come up with the key decisions that were made and what what follow-up items that we need to make sure that we do. And so if you think about this and you get into a mantra for this, it's AI handles the transactional and PMs handle the transformational, right? We're the ones that are talking about vision and relationships, judgment calls, and influence, right? So AI is transactional, PMs are transformational. And if we can do that in an augmentation role, then we're cooking with gas. So today's focus, when we start to talk about prompting, is I want to start to use AI to surface what's actually important in your project. So again, I want to use AI as a thinking partner to help us navigate and find some of those transformational themes that we then can go and enact as a project manager. We also want to free up time for the project managers to do that high value work. So that's going to be our focus today. And what we're going to talk about in your non-negotiable experiment for this episode is I want you to run a project health diagnostic. And so I want you to ask AI to analyze your project and tell you what actually needs your attention. Now, what's really cool about this now, I know a lot of you may have Copilot out there. And organization I work with has Copilot. And Copilot does have access to all of my emails. So a lot of times you can start to pick up things via communications. So I do a lot of project rescue work. I get invited by clients a lot of times, or people that projects are not going well, and they ask me to come in and help course correct that, figure out what's going on, and course correct that. And I'll do this project health diagnostic as part of it. I'll ask for has there been any tense emails? Was there something like a sponsor was yelling at somebody else, or was a bad email that came from a client? Give me 3 or 4 transcriptions of the last team meetings, those kinds of things. I collect all of that and I do this project health diagnostic. Now, obviously, we don't have all that available to us here, but I can show you a prompt. And again, for those of you that may be just picking up this episode for the first time, the prompts will be posted on pmthatworks.com. That's pmthatworks.com. I'll post the prompts that go along with each episode there. And you can also, if you're listening to this, see it on YouTube. And if you're seeing it on YouTube, you can listen to this in your car if you want. We're trying to make sure that we hit all of the platforms. But we're going to do a project health diagnostic. First, we're going to listen to a quick commercial from our friends at Centric Consulting. Then we'll be right back with our dual screen prompts as we get into our live experiments.
In today's economy, leaders are looking for a different kind of consulting partner. A partner that will work with you to understand your culture, technology, and employees. A partner that will develop the solutions you need, not the solutions they know best. For us, it's never been about simply checking a box. Since we were founded in 1999, Centric Consulting has established a reputation for solving its clients' toughest problems by delivering flexible, tailored, cost-efficient solutions. all centered on the right outcomes for each business. It's all part of our mission to deliver an unmatched experience you won't get anywhere else. Centered on what's best for you, Centric is ready to guide you on the journey ahead.
And we're back. Thank you so much to Centric Consulting for giving us the time and the space and the energy to bring this podcast to life and to be able to share this with everyone. So we're back. We've got our dual screens up right now. I've got the ChatGPT on one side, Claude on the other. I don't advocate one or the other. I use Copilot. There's tons of tools out on the market I'm continuously experimenting with just to find certain things I like. So if I'm trying to generate pictures, I kind of like ChatGPT for pictures. I do like when I'm trying to do some of the emotional stuff. I feel like Claude does a little bit better at trying to find motivational mantras and that kind of stuff. You'll find there's little idiosyncrasies in each one of them. I do use Copilot a lot because it attaches to all of my work stuff, so it can see emails, it can see documents, it can do stuff like that. And so each one of them has pros and cons, and I suggest that you play with them all, experiment and play as much as possible. Okay. So our first prompt we're going to talk about today, and this is your non-negotiable experiment, is your project health diagnostic. So I'm going to put the prompt in both, but I'll read it really quickly. You're an experienced PMO director reviewing project health. I always like to give a persona to my chats just so that they understand the context in which I'm wanting the response back. Again, first ask me. We're using Socratic prompting. If you don't know what Socratic prompting is, we covered that in episode 1, but it's where we ask it to ask us questions and then answer questions versus just commanding it to do a problem. Instead of just saying, hey, review this for project health, I wanted to make sure it's a thinking partner with me and not just an intern for that matter. So first, ask me 3 to 5 clarifying questions about the project's current state, team dynamics, and stakeholder concerns. Then using my answers, provide a diagnostic report that answers what are the top 3 risks that need PM attention right now, which stakeholder relationships need strengthening and why, what decision is being avoided or delayed that's creating drag, where is the team's energy or morale most vulnerable, and what one action would have the highest impact on project momentum this week. And then I give it a current project context, which we're doing the social wishing app. So social wishing is in month 2 of development. We're building an app where people share bucket list wishes with Facebook friends who can make them happen. The team is 5 engineers, 2 designers, 1 QA. Our sprint velocity is dropped by 20% in the last 2 sprints. Daily stand-ups feel perfunctory, like we're just doing it, but we're not actually sharing real information. Sponsor keeps asking about launch date, but we haven't finalized the MVP scope yet. 1 senior engineer just gave notice, and we have 4 months and $200,000 left in the budget. So that's the context in which we're doing it. Now imagine that current project context. That's where I want you to either put those emails, put transcripts from the last 3 or 4 team meetings. That's where that goes. I just made up this project context so we can move this prompt forward. So I'm going to put that in both ChatGPT 5.2 and Claude Sonnet 4.6. So now they're going to start asking me questions. So the clarifying questions here first is, scope and product clarity. So who owns MVP scope decisions and how many material scope changes have happened in the last 4 weeks? That's a good question. So we can say, sponsor owns MVP and there have been 10 changes. Let's just say big. Backlog readiness. A story is entering sprint fully defined with acceptance criteria, design ready, or teams clarifying and discovering work mid-sprint. We'll say mid-sprint. Has the sponsor agreed on success criteria for launch, meaning what must be a true MVP for them to call it ready? I'll say no, keeps adding to the MVP. Engineering health. How critical is the departing senior engineer to architecture and decision-making and its knowledge transfer happening? Senior engineer was a core component of the team. Big loss for us. And team sentiment. If you ask the team privately, do they feel behind, unclear, overworked, or disengaged? I'm going to say they're disengaged. and now it's going to do its thing. Now, interesting here, Claude didn't listen. So it went straight to, well, maybe it did. So it's a meaningful moment for the project. Some of these signals are early warnings worth taking seriously. Before I put together, okay, so it's asking me questions here. So the MVP scope situation, when you say it hasn't been finalized, is that because there's genuine disagreement about what belongs in MVP, or no one has forced a decision and it keeps getting pushed? And who has the authority? I'll just say sponsor keeps inventing new features. Departing senior engineer. Do you know why they're leaving? Senior engineer is leaving due to frustration and changing scope. Stand-up quality. When you say you feel perfunctory, what's actually happening? Are people just giving status updates with no problem surfing? Is there tension being voided? Does this team seem disengaged? So I'm going to say disengaged and not announcing any blockers. Sponsor relationship how is the launch date conversion going? Is the sponsor aware that MVP scope isn't locked? Are they operating under the assumption that things are on track? How receptive are they to candidate status updates? They don't acknowledge the new features as new, we'll just say. And then team confidence in the product. Does the team believe in what social wishing is trying to do? What the concept depends heavily on social behavior. Is there any skepticism internally about whether the core mechanic will work? I'll say there's no skepticism. Let's see what it comes up with. So doing this, the top 3 risks that need PM attention, uncontrolled MVP expansion, of course. Impact velocity has already dropped 20%. Team trust and sprint commitment is eroding. 4-month timeline at risk. Budget burn. So I think that's relatively straightforward. Risk 2, architectural fragility. It's fine. Risk 3, team disengagement and psychological withdrawal. So totally agree with that. What stakeholder relationships need strengthening? Well, the sponsor, and why. What's the big decision being avoided? What is the minimum version of social wishing that validates the core concept within 4 months of 200,000? So right now, yep, that's the piece. Where morale is most vulnerable, ownership and agency. And one action with the highest impact this week, run a 90-minute MVP reset session with a sponsor in the core team. That would be actually the thing that I would do. If this was my project or I was just coming into this project, I would absolutely stop, get everybody in a room, hash it out, and come to an agreement. So I really like that suggestion there. And it, by the way, gives you an agenda for it. So state the constraints clearly, ask the sponsor what must be there, force the prioritization, establish a change control, and appoint a temporary technical decision owner. And it gives you an outcome. So I really like the one action with the highest impact this week. I completely agree with that. Now, Claude brought it out more of a report, which I kind of like, right? And so this one is giving me stuff. I could go turn this into a report. I could tell it, go design this into an executive report. But Claude kind of gave that to me already as a report. So it talks about scope creep is destroying the team. You have no MVP in month 2. The team has gone silent. So it's kind of, formatting this a little bit tighter. Stakeholder relationships, the sponsor says urgently but carefully. I like that. I actually want to read that a little bit further. It says core problem here is a shared reality gap. They're operating in a world where their feature ideas are refinements. You're operating in a world where there's scope additions with real cost. This isn't malicious. Sponsors often genuinely don't see the downstream impact of small additions. Now, what I like about this and why I think it's really important, why I share things with you, sometimes like I wasn't really feeling the ChatGPT output on this one, to be honest with you, except for that last one. But the Claude output is coaching. And so imagine you're a year 3 or year 4 project manager, or maybe you are a year 3 or year 4 project manager, and you're listening to this. That's the kind of coaching I would want right there. It's like, hey, that's the exact right coaching for this situation. Is like, I don't think anybody's being malicious, although tension is growing. People are quitting the project. Sponsor doesn't see it. So I love the urgently but carefully. It's exactly how I would coach. And I like how it's saying it's not malicious. They don't see the downstream impact, but we need a direct, structured conversation that makes trade-off visible. So here's what's in MVP. Here's what each addition costs in time and money, and here's what we must cut to accommodate it. So the goal isn't to win an argument, it's to get them to the same decision-making frame as the rest of the team. Love that coaching. That's fantastic. So kudos to Claude for coming up with that. I'm going to go back to, so decision being avoided, MVP scope lock. And then one of the highest impact, again, it also suggests to convene a 90-minute MVP scope. So I've had 2 independent experts now tell me that 90-minute MVP scope lock session, and I like that they both said 90 minutes, not indefinite, but 90 minutes, and to make sure that we get to that impact. Now, Claude, I've noticed, tries to be very encouraging. So ChatGPT will be, if you allow it. What's funny about the way ChatGPT communicates with me is when I do communicate with it, even though we're doing Socratic prompting, I am very bullet point oriented. Like I'll take it from there. But Claude always throws in that sentence at the bottom. It says the good news is none of this is fatal yet. Month 2 with budget intact and a team that's disengaged but not yet departed is recoverable. The window is short, but it's open. So I do like that. Okay. So that is a project health diagnostic prompt. And again, my challenge to you is to do that with one-year projects. But I want to share a couple other prompts here for this episode. So the next one is the decision architecture mapper. So again, let's say, we've got to figure out why these decisions aren't being made properly, or that there's not any governance around the changes. And so in this one, I call it a decision architecture, a decision architecture mapper. And so the prompt in this one is you're a project governance consultant. So again, I want governance guardrails around this. The same thing, ask me 2 to 3 questions about how decisions are currently being made on this project. Then help me design better decision architecture by answering, what categories of decisions exist on the project. For each category, who should make the decision? What decision rights are currently unclear or creating bottlenecks? And what decision-making process should I establish for the most critical category? And again, we'll use a fake scenario from the Social Wishing app. And so again, you'll start to see the questions. So the questions are: when sponsor requests a feature mid-sprint, who ultimately says yes or no? And is that decision documented anywhere? I'll say nobody says yes or no. The sponsor is going directly to the developers. When engineers disagree on architecture or infrastructure trade-offs, who has the final authority to decide? I say senior engineer, but she left. And then when prioritizing bugs or versus new features, does the product owner decide independently, or does that escalate to you, the sponsor? There we go. Let's say a sponsor is the product owner. We'll just say that, right? Because that's a typical one. It says you have 5 clear categories. Strategic. It says, based on your context, here's the decision architecture you should move forward. Decision categories and social wishing. So you've got strategic, scope, technical, tactical, resource, and budget. And it's going to start to do the design. So I'm going to answer the questions and off it goes. I'm going to cut and paste these answers I gave over here to give the same answers. But I like, so it has, when the sponsor requests a new feature, what actually happens? What's the relationship between you and the product owner? And then I like question 3 here. What decisions are you personally making that you feel shouldn't require your involvement? And what decisions are landing on the sponsor you think the team should own? I said, I should own total scope because of fixed budget. So I'll add that line and see what it does. So it's telling me I have a governance vacuum. ChatGPT says I have a governance vacuum. Right now, sponsors is acting as a product owner. Sponsors bypassing the PM. So it says, it gives me all that kind of stuff. But here's our decision categories and social. So I still have 5 categories. So strategic, scope, technical, tactical, budget, and runway. I should establish strategic. Decision maker is sponsor, consulted is PM, informed is team. Sponsor defines outcome and success metrics only. In scope, product owner role must be clarified. So it's starting to give us kind of those understandings. And in this case, it also says, we should have a 30-minute weekly scope council. So suggesting a new ceremony, because this has been a problem, it's suggesting a new 30-minute ceremony for us to be able to put that to bed, which I really, really like. On the Claude side, it actually built out a full RACI. It does a little bit better in charts. So it gave us strategic, scope, tactical, technical, and resource, gave us a RACI by category. And then it says the critical shift here is that scope moves to me with a fixed budget, no senior engineer buffer. Ungoverned scope is an existential threat. So it gives us that ability to have that conversation and coach us to that conversation to our sponsor. So, and then it finishes with the honest conversation you need to have. This is the hardest part of the architecture isn't designing it. It's the single conversation where you tell the sponsor that scope authority is shifting to you. So again, I really like the coaching that Claude has been giving in this episode around these areas. So that's another idea for you. It's called the decision architecture mapper. And then finally, I'm big on energy. And so in this case, the third prompt I want to show you this week is what we call an energy audit. And so in this one, it says you're a team dynamics coach working with project managers. Ask me 3 to 4 questions about team morale, motivation, and alignment with project goals, and then provide an analysis answering where's team energy highest, what's lowest, what misalignment exists. Now, again, if you have transcripts of meetings or you have emails or things like that you can put in here, we can do context mapping from that, and you'll get better answers to some of these questions. But again, I gave it a team concept, that same thing about velocity dropping 20%. And it's going to start asking me questions again. So if you ask the engineer privately, what do they say they're most proud of building so far in this project? What a great question, right? And I'll say they feel nothing is built. How about that? Do they believe the product has real market potential? Yes, great potential. When the sponsor adds requests, do engineers feel heard when they raise concerns, or do they feel overruled? I'll say overruled. And has anyone openly said they're worried about burnout or leaving? Yep, senior engineer is leaving. And so we'll put that in. Again, Claude asks a little bit deeper questions. When the team talks about the product, social listening itself, what specifically lights them up? How did the team react to the senior engineer's resignation? Outside of stand-ups, where's the conversation actually happening on this team? That one's phenomenal. What a great question. Outside of stand-ups, where's the real conversation happening? Is it Slack? Is it hallway talks? Is it lunch groups? So I'll say they love the idea. Team was shocked. And then we'll say Slack threads is where the real conversation's happening. And when was the last time something shipped and the team felt genuinely good about it? It's not just done, but proud. And I'll say, can't say we are proud of anything yet. We're 2 months in, right? So it's early on. So again, they'll give you an answer of where the team energy is highest. And it says your remaining fuel source is, belief in product potential, desire to build something durable, professional identity as builders. It says where energy is lowest around progress and control. Misalignment between team and leadership. So we need to add visible features, move fast, show momentum. Should be the leadership focus. The team focus should be build something coherent, avoid rework, and protect architecture. So really, really cool stuff. The one conversation I should have this week, have a direct, grounded conversation with the team without the sponsor, acknowledge their feelings, ask what we should protect, clarify the mission, and commit to no more invisible overrides, essentially. So nice there. On the Claude side, it does the same. Concept is still the asset. The gap between what they're building and why they're building it is where it sees the energy is the lowest. the misalignment between team and leadership priorities, and then narrative worth reinforcing. So we're 2 months in and we just learned something expensive but valuable. The project needed better architecture before it could move. We're not behind, we're resetting with clearer rules. People still here chose to stay. Now we're going to build the thing we actually believe in with the scope we can defend and ship something we're proud of. So again, fantastic coaching coming from the Claude side on this. And then it says the one conversation to have this week is a team retrospective, but not a sprint retro, a project retrospective. Not about velocity or tickets, but about the experience of working on the project so far. And then you start asking questions like, what's been the most frustrating part of the last 2 months? What are you most proud of, even if it's small? What would need to be true for you to feel good about this project 3 months from now? So on and so forth. So again, phenomenal coaching there. So you can see when we start talking about what PMs really do, none of this was about status report or meeting minutes. Part of this was like trying to identify where decision making can be better, where team dynamics can be better, how we can help do a project health diagnostic, and maybe it surfaces some things that we're not quite thinking of. These are the types of activities that I want to free up that other time for you to do so that you're starting to think in these capacities. A lot of times we don't have time to sit and think about this stuff. So remember that this is designed to give you more percentage of time to add things that are valuable. So as a recap of this episode, project managers are not project secretaries. We're sense makers and decision architects. AI should handle the busy work so we could focus on the transformational. Your non-negotiable experiment this week is to run the project health diagnostic on a current project this week. Act on at least one of the insights it surfaces. So make sure that, again, you can use transcripts or emails or status reports or risk logs or anything that's been updated and let it start to pull some of the context out. What I want you to notice when you start to do this is, did AI surface something you were avoiding or that you have not articulated yet? And then how much time do you save when AI starts to help you organize your thinking and focus your energy on the core activity? Think about, again, instead of like twirling and having a bunch of individual, that 90-minute scope session, how impactful that would be if this was your real project. Now, next time when we get together, we're going to talk about the halo effect and how that's gone wild and why we promote sometimes the wrong people to project management. And we're also going to continue to use some of those AI prompts to help you become as a transformational leader as a project manager. So thank you so much. I look forward to hearing from this episode. Like, subscribe, reach out to me on social media. Give me any of the comments that you love, good or bad. I love to hear them all. And we'll see you on the next episode of AI Driven PM. I'm Rick Morris, and this has been AI Driven PM. Keep protecting your people, telling the truth, and making dreams come true.